Welcome to the Soccer Chaplains United podcast from the Touchline. And now, here's your host, Rev Brad.
Hello, friends. Well, I want to welcome you to the podcast today, and I want to welcome special guest Clint Irwin. Clint, welcome to the From the Touchline podcast.
Rev, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here and excited to catch up with you.
It won't be too much. Well, it will be a little bit of catch up. But we just saw each other a couple weeks ago for frame of reference, and I had a super enjoyable time. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the pod. But Clint, you have had a long MLS career, a long soccer career, and I thought, man, we'll get into some of those bits and parts of the story, your story. Like looking back, what was it? 13, 14, 15 seasons in MLS and soccer. I don't even have the number in front of me.
Yeah, 14 total seasons, 12 in MLS. So I spent a couple of years on the start of my career in the lower leagues at different spots. But yeah, 14 years.
Wow. That's it feels like an MLS career these days. Well, you know the numbers, right? You're part of the player association. What is the average MLS lifespan?
I think the last time we checked, it was about 2.5 years for most guys in the career. And, again, that number can be guys who are kind of coming in and going out of the league, whether they're from, Europe or South America. So there is some impact on that average, but, it's typically a pretty short lifespan for players. And I think that's true across most sports. I think people don't realize how short and fleeting these careers typically are, even for players who are very good. And, your career can be impacted by injury. It could be impacted by performance. There's a variety of factors. And, I was always aware of that and tried to maximize everything that I could do. And so I was fortunate to play for a long time and take home some great experiences, but certainly not typical.
Well, you had nearly 7 lifetimes if we look at the average. But I was just thinking as you said that, I was like, tell me you're good without telling me you're good. And again, I think there is something to being in the game and around the league at that level for such a long time. But Clint, let's start. I want to hear your story in your own words, right? And so take us back, like whether you want to go back into youth or your college days, but where for you, where was this love of the game? Where did it begin? Where did it start?
So I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, and had a pretty typical childhood. I went to Christian school from kindergarten until I graduated, and I grew up playing nearly every sport. So I played soccer in the fall. I played basketball in the winter. I played baseball in the spring, and then I play some tennis in the summer, and then soccer would start back up again. And so I just had this love of playing and competing, and it did help that I was pretty athletic, and I was a good soccer player. Obviously, I was a good basketball player kind of through middle school. I was a good baseball player through middle school, and ultimately I got to high school and I started, I would say, having more love of the process and the practice that it took in soccer than I did in the other sports. And so that became more of my focus. But even through high school, I played soccer and basketball and tennis some. And so it was just a way to, I think for me, like, get my competitiveness out. And I've really started to realize that as I've transitioned out of the sport, how much of that is still a part of me. And so, through high school, I was a good player. I was, North Carolina State Player of the Year. I was at Adidas ESP camp, which was kind of like all-star precursor to a lot of what the academies have. So basically like the top 100 players in the country would get together for this camp for a few days. And so I got invited to that. And I had committed pretty early to play at Elon University in North Carolina, which was at the time and still is like a mid-major Division I school. I had visited North Carolina, Wake Forest, and Davidson, and some others, but the bigger schools wanted me to walk on at first and kind of earn a
Mm.
scholarship, and so that route, it wasn't necessarily scary to me, but I also felt like I could play and have a good chance of playing. And at those bigger schools, you have a lot of good players coming in every year, and you can sometimes get lost in the shuffle. And I had a great relationship with the coach. Their assistant coach came to one of my basketball games in high school,
Mm.
and I was not. By the time I got to high school, I was not like a all-state basketball player. Like I was playing on a pretty good team, and but it just showed that they cared and that they valued me and wanted me to come there. And so it was an easy decision to go to Elon. And I went and played, and I played 4 years there.
Nice.
We won a conference championship for the first time while I was there.
Mm.
We never made the NCAA tournament, but we were kind of an inflection point for the program to take off. And since then they've done very well. So we were kind of, I guess, the turnaround class in some ways,
Yeah.
for it. And by my senior year, I was, I had kind of a track record of doing well in college, and so I was on, you know, the Herman watch list, which is like the top players, and so I felt like I had a good chance to play pro if I had a good year. But unfortunately, I injured my quad, I think like 8 games in the season, and I missed pretty much all the regular season, and I came back for the conference championships, and we lost in the first round.
Mm.
And so our season was done. We weren't going to the tournament. We weren't going to get in front of any scouts or like kind of get that big stage to play on. And so, at that point, I knew, okay, I might get drafted, I might not get drafted. And I ended up not getting drafted, but got invited into preseason with New England Revolution, who I had
Who was the
uh,
coach at the time?
Stevie Nickel.
Oh, okay.
So Steve Nickel, Paul Mariner. Um,
Is this when is this 2010, 11,
yeah,
12?
so this would be basically spring 2011,
Okay.
was my graduating year. So I had trained with New England the year before, like in the summer off season, it was kind of a thing back then. It was like college players would go and train with MLS teams and just kind of get on the radar a little bit. So I had gone to New England. I'd done well the summer before, and so um, you know, not getting drafted in MLS is not that big of a deal, right? Like, because even the guys who are getting drafted, if you're outside the top 10, you're basically all you've really earned is a ticket to try out. And so I knew I wasn't really in any different spot than anyone else who had been drafted. But I was coming off an injury, and it was just a weird like spot to be in because I hadn't played a lot in the fall, and then I got injured, and then the season was over, and so trying to find training and like prepare yourself for that was difficult. Like there wasn't all these pro teams or just
Mm.
options to train, and so I felt like I went in maybe not quite as prepared as I should be, and it showed, and ultimately I got cut 2 weeks in, and deservedly so. Like I was not up to the level, and so from there, you feel okay. Well, I was in MLS camp. Like I'll just drop down a level, like get a contract in USL, or at the time it was also in NASL.
Hmm.
And so I went and tried out with a few teams, uh, Carolina Railhawks being one of them. Went on some open tryouts. Like this is back in the day where some of these teams aren't even around anymore. Like Harrisburg City Islanders, Wilmington Hammerheads,
Sure.
Richmond Kickers. And so, I was literally, I was staying on my buddy's couch in Raleigh. I would train with the Railhawks on Monday, and then I would drive after training to Richmond, like 3 hours away. And so I could train with Richmond on Tuesday. I'd drive back to Raleigh, and I'd train with the Railhawks on Wednesday. I'd drive back to Richmond and train with Richmond on Thursday, and then drive
Wow.
back to Raleigh to train with the Railhawks on Friday, and it was just a way to like get in front of as many people as I possibly could at once.
What was the level at that time, just given those clubs? Because, as you said, some of them aren't around anymore, but some of them are, and they've grown, USL Championship and USL League One. So what was the level though at that time? Were you feeling like, yeah, this is pushing me, stretching me, or did you feel like, no, I'm better than this?
So I felt MLS, I felt like, okay, like this is a definite step up from what I've been at, like more physical, faster, more intense. But I felt like over time I had adjusted to it and I was starting to kind of get over that hump and get better and improve. And then when I dropped down to, let's say, NASL, I felt like, okay, like this is slower than MLS and I can kind of figure it out. And I feel like I can certainly perform at this level and play at this level. And then USL, I felt like it was maybe another step down below that, but not much. And so at both of those levels, I thought, hey, like I'm performing as well as the goalkeepers here that are on the team. Like I feel like I should be getting a contract. And I just didn't. And nowhere that I went offered me a contract. And, I think you sort of internalize that as like, oh man, like I just might not really be very good, but then you kind of learn like, well, they're really just bringing you in because they need 4 goalkeepers so that they can play on 2 fields at once, or they already have guys signed and they want to look at you for the future, or they're just they don't have any money to sign anyone else. It's not necessarily always a reflection of what you're doing or what you're bringing. It might just be the situation of the team. And so but at the time it was really hard to do that. Like you're basically hearing, that first year I probably heard from 10 teams in 2 months that you're not good enough. And so that rejection is hard to take, because as I was coming up through the ranks of soccer, like I was never cut from a team. I was, always the best player. I was, a very good performer, standout performer, right? Like it was pretty much just roses all the way up on that path. And so this was kind of my first real taste of rejection, or I guess difficulty in some way. Not that I hadn't overcome other difficulties before that, but just in a real way of like a wake up call, like, hey, like the market of soccer is saying that you aren't good enough. Like, what are you going to do? And so ultimately I answered a random email that I got from a team called Capital City SC, based in Ottawa, Ontario, playing in the Canadian Soccer League. And I went up and I signed with them pretty much on the spot because I didn't have anywhere else to go. I signed for $500 a month and a $50 win bonus, and moved into a house with bunk beds where I was living with 7 other guys. And so played there for the 2011 season. I was captain. We made it to the championship game. We lost in the championship. And from there, I was like, I'm not coming back here. Like the level wasn't great. I mean, it was good to get games, but it wasn't a place that I was like wanting to come back to, for a variety of reasons. And so I went back on the tryout circuit, and I was literally going to open tryouts, which I don't know if people are familiar with open tryouts, but Rev, you could have been out there with me kicking the ball around on the same field.
Hey, I might have been out there. I might have been out there.
You might have been. It's possible. I remember there's actually like a soccer journalist who was out there for one of the tryouts I was at and wrote an account of it as just like a piece of content. And so, yeah, it was, every time you step out there, you're like, what am I doing? I'm literally at the bottom of the soccer pyramid, if not buried below the pyramid in some way.
Well, we're going to take a break with that, and we'll be right back in just a minute. Hi, I'm Rev Brad Kenney. I wrote the Soccer Psalms to help people reconnect with God's Word by seeing how the beautiful game reflects the truths of Scripture. Inside the book, you'll find 31 Psalms, one for each day of the month. They're short reflections that link soccer's moments of joy, struggle, and teamwork with the timeless story of God's love. And whether you call it soccer or football, this book is for you. It's available worldwide on Amazon as the Soccer Psalms, the Football Psalms in British English, and even Los Salmos del Fútbol in Spanish. So before the next kickoff, take a moment to discover how the game we love can point us back to God's Word and the one who gave us both.
And so I did that for another year, for a few months after, and then I signed with my hometown team, the Charlotte Eagles, which is the team like I grew up going to the games and going to their soccer camps, and knew their coaches well. And I took a pay cut. I signed for $50 a month, moved back in with my parents, and then picked up 2 other jobs to make it work. And then, from there I had a decent season. I played in our Open Cup run, and we made it to the quarterfinals. I didn't play a ton of league games.
Wait, you guys made it quarterfinals in Open Cup?
Yeah, in 2012 we were in USL, and we made it to the quarterfinals in the Open Cup.
Did you guys beat the Rapids?
We did not beat the Rapids.
It feels like we have lost so many times.
Yeah.
To a USL or NASL team in Open Cup.
So we were the Kings of Texas during our run. So we beat El Paso, which was PDL, I think, at the time. We beat San Antonio Scorpions, who were NASL.
Yep.
And we beat the Dallas Burn in Dallas. And then we lost to Chivas USA in extra time in the quarterfinals to Greg Vanny and Robin Fraser were coaching. Yeah. And so I finally had like a little bit of, I guess, highlight tape from that. And, at the end of the season, my coach in Charlotte's like, hey, like, I think you have some ability to play at the next level. And I was like, great. In my head, I'm like, yeah, I agree. Like, I've been trying to do that over the last couple of years. But also in my head, I'm like, you played me in 8 games this year, and, this doesn't make a lot of sense, but okay, tell me like what you think. And so, he actually got me into train with the New York Red Bulls at the time when Hans Baca was the coach. And, so I went up and trained with the Red Bulls after the 2012 season. And this was the Red Bulls team that had Thierry Henry, Rafa Marquez, Tim Cahill, and just, big names, right? Like all these names that you watched on TV, and you're like, 3 weeks ago, you're literally playing in front of 500 people in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and now you're on the, taking free kicks from Thierry Henry after training. And so I performed well in New York. The goalkeeper coach in New York, Todd Hofford, was like, hey, like, you did well here. I want to get you in somewhere else. Just get in front of someone. So he sent me to Columbus. So I had driven from Charlotte to New York to train, and I literally just got in my car and drove from, New Jersey to Columbus to continue.
Wait, Clint. Like, you're talking about driving this car. We got to know, what kind of car was it? Like,
so I just had like a 2002 Honda Accord. So yeah, it was, it got me from point A to point B.
Yeah,
had some decent gas mileage, right? So
enough room in the trunk for throwing the balls and gloves and everything.
Yeah, exactly. The trunk was sealed, so all the stank just stayed in the back of the trunk. So, so I drove to Columbus. I did well in Columbus too, and so I was kind of thinking, hey, like maybe I'll get an invite back to preseason at one of these teams, and of course both coaching staffs got let go after that season was over. So I'm like, oh man, like, what am I, that was it, right? Like that was my one connection to maybe get an opportunity. And so, I stayed in touch with the goalkeeper coach of New York, and he was able to, kind of look and see what else was out there. And then at the same time, I'd had this job offer from the company I was working for part-time, But it was a full-time offer and they wanted me to essentially quit soccer and like be a full-time employee.
Hmm.
And so I kind of had that out there. And, I was thinking at the time, I was like, I don't have anything on the horizon. This was probably November 2012. Like I don't have any teams out there that I know I'm going to have a training opportunity with. I don't have an agent that's doing any of this stuff. Like I really don't have any sort of soccer prospects to bank on or look forward to. But, I just felt like I had this ability and I would always have these regrets if I never tried or tried to see like how far I could go. And so I wanted to be all in and I wanted to just, essentially just have no regrets. I think some people have said like you basically like burned the boats, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I quit the job completely. They would have let me stay part-time, but I quit the job completely. I like significantly stopped, my coaching job, and basically just like went all in on training, like preparing myself for an opportunity that wasn't even known at the
It didn't
time.
exist.
It didn't exist. Yeah, it was.
What were people saying at this point? Like, were your parents, were people around you like, you're crazy? Like, there's nothing, or or were they like, no, we're behind you. Like, we're with you in this.
Honestly, I don't really remember my parents saying like anything good or like bad, but that was not abnormal for them. Like they've just always been supportive of like if you really believe this and you put your mind to it, like we'll support you and we're here for you. Like we're not going to push you one way or another. It's
Hmm.
these outcomes are up to you and your desire, and we will support you in the ways that we can. And so like I never, I guess I didn't really like check in with them. It's like, hey, dad, mom, like what do you think I should do? I never really approached it in that way. I do remember sitting in the meeting where I told the guys that I was working for, like, hey, this is what I'm gonna do. And they were like, okay. Like they were kind of like, so wait,
Which team was that?
yeah, they're like, so wait, you don't want to keep work like you they're like, you can still keep working part-time, and I was like, yeah, like I don't want to do that. Like I just want to go all in on this. And so
Wow. Wow.
um I think that kind of surprised them, but I still keep in touch with them to this day. But um so I did that. Like I was like maniacal in my preparation and just getting ready for again something that didn't exist. And ultimately I got a call from Colorado to come in for preseason. And yeah, like I don't know if we want to we want to pause there for any reflection, but that was kind of the start of my MLS career in different ways, and went in there on a tryout basis and did well, and I'm sure we'll hit on more of that how that happened, but that's kind of my origin story. I know it started a while ago in Charlotte as a kid, but um, it's a story that I enjoy sharing, and it we haven't finished it, but I wanted to pause for a second
Yeah, no, no,
just to take a
no.
breath.
Well, you should host a podcast because it's exactly where I was going to be like, hey, let's take a break and come back after this, which we'll do in just a second. But there's so many things just even out of the origin story that I've got at least two questions for you. So, one is, you were multi-sport athlete, which I don't know, today doesn't seem like a thing anymore. Like it's like go all in on one sport, soccer, whatever it is. You've got kids though, you've got boys. Like, are you going to raise them as multi-sport athletes, or if they show promise in a athletic endeavor, are you going to be like, no, let's go all in on this? Like, what? I don't know. Like, I was kind of a multi-sport athlete all throughout school, but the thing today just feels like no, no. At an earlier age, you have to like be dedicated. Where do you kind of land on the argument?
I think multi-sport is so key to developing just all around athletes and all around people. So I will push back as hard as I can against early specialization. I think it's I think there's so much to be gained by playing other sports, physically, emotionally, psychologically, and I benefited from it in so many different ways. And I'll give you an example, right? Like, so probably from since I can remember playing sports to eighth grade, like I was the best player. I was the best player on the soccer team. I was the best player on the basketball team. I was the best player on the baseball team. So like I was the guy, right? And like when you're the guy, people want to be your friend. Parents are impressed. You get all these kind of ancillary social benefits to being the best at something. I'm sure that that's the case if you're like the best at chess or like the best at computer science, right? Like people look to
Yeah.
you and are like,
Yeah.
hey, that person's really smart, or like they're really good at this. And so you get kind of that glow, right, for lack of a better term, which is good. I don't think there's not a lot of downsides to that. But as I went through high school, I kept playing these sports, and my own personal desires changed in some ways, right? Like I really was drawn to soccer, and so I spent more time playing soccer. I started playing not just in the fall. I'd play like fall and spring, but I'd still play basketball in the winter. And so I still was good at soccer. I stayed one of the best players at soccer, but in basketball, my skills sort of waned, right? Like I was not one of those guys getting up shots in the morning before practice. I was on the basketball team, and in middle school, I was the best player in eighth grade. I was probably still one of the best players in ninth grade on the JV team. But
Mm-hmm.
then when I went to varsity, I was made the varsity team in 10th grade. I was not one of the best players. And so I had to figure out how to integrate into a team when I was no longer the
The best
guy
player.
or the best player, right? And so that's one shift that I think is like really healthy, because ultimately most of us are going to grow up and not be the best at every single thing, right?
Right.
Like we need to figure out where we can contribute and where we are the best and where we're not the best, and like figure out how to fit in. And so I knew like, okay, I want to play. I'm decent, but like I'm not the best at this thing. Like, what do I need to do? And so I kind of became like a defensive, like rebound, set picks, you know, energy guy. And that was my way to get on the floor and get playing time. Um, but also, I also learned, okay, I'm not starting many games. My other role is to be a good teammate, right, and support the
Right.
guys who are playing, and like not be mad or sad on the bench because I'm not starting, even though I feel like I should be, right? So you learn sort of that emotional intelligence and just what it takes to have a successful team. And so I start there, but then I fast forward to my career in some ways, and why I was able to have that longevity was that my role in soccer changed in different ways from season to season. I went from when I made the Rapids team as the third goalkeeper to the starter in a very short period of time. And then I was the starter for a couple seasons, and then kind of got demoted to the bench, and I was the second string goalkeeper. And like I kind of rode that wave throughout my career, but in each place I still had that lesson of, okay, even though you're not on the team, how do you make the team better?
Mm.
Right? Like
Yeah.
how are you helping your teammates? How are you supporting your teammates? How are you contributing to the team culture in a way that even though you're not on the field, I think people fail to realize like the strength of the group is what propels the team, and it's not always just the players on the field performing that enables people to do that. It's the players who are in practice pushing the guys who are starting on the weekend to prepare them in the right way, like trying to figure out where you can add value in different ways. And so I think I don't know if I necessarily would have had that if I was the best at every sport that I played in, right? And I
Sure.
didn't know how to handle not being the guy, or like being a role player, right? Like I think those lessons can just serve you in so many different ways. And so there's a bunch of other ones on like just physical burnout, psychological burnout, from playing one sport and specializing it, that I think are also important. But that's just one example of like why I think multi-sport roles and teams are so beneficial in the long run.
Well, and maybe this is part of the longevity argument for, a longer career is having the mental fortitude as well as some of the cross training, if you will, to have played other sports and realize realize roles, realize, your contributions to a team versus, some of the other, you had some individual sport in there with tennis and whatnot. But so one last question before we take a break. It's been rumored, or at least it got said. I remember this. And maybe it was like 2013, 2014, but it was like you were the Kurt Warner of Major League Soccer, where I had this idea that like you were working in a grocery store somewhere, but you mentioned like having those 1, 2, 3 other jobs while you're sleeping on someone's couch and you're just working for that moment. Like, was there a moment that you felt? I mean, you talked about it. I'm at the lowest rung of the pyramid, but was there a moment where you're like, I'm being buried by the soccer pyramid right now? Like, did you just feel like hanging it up, giving it up at any point along that couch surfing journey?
Yeah, I mean, the whole first year of playing in Ottawa was just a real mental struggle. It was one of those things where I think
Now you got paid $500 a month, but it was Canadian.
yeah, that's true. It also was Canadian. At the time, though, the exchange rate was actually favorable
Okay.
to be getting paid in Canadian. So it's like when we went home, we took a little extra change with us,
Yeah.
But that whole year was really tough because I was playing at a level that I felt like was below what I was playing at even in college. And the player, we had a good team. We had a lot of young guys with a lot of talent, but we're playing. Our games were like in public parks and like high school fields, and like there was no one really watching. There's no attention paid to the league. We had guys showing up to practice via public transportation, and like they wouldn't make it to practice because the bus wasn't running that day, or they're working another job, and it's like, well, the soccer team's paying me like $100 a month, and this job is paying me, $600 a month. Like, you kind of make a decision based on the math as to like which job you show up to when they're in conflict with each other. And so I'm looking at it because I want to progress, I want to play and at a higher level, and I had gotten a taste of it, and I knew where I wanted to go. And so it was like frustrating to have this view of yourself, but the external view of you is actually like you're only as good as this like semi-pro league. And so
yeah,
the toughest,
better.
Yeah, the toughest part was it was one to put yourself on the same level as your teammates and not hold yourself above them in any way, but also to hold yourself to a higher standard every day that maybe not everyone else wanted to hold themselves to. And so that's like a really tough balance to hit because, you have the standards of the league and maybe the standards of the team that are one thing and below like where you want to be, but you also have like internally where you want to go and what you have to hold yourself to get there. And so it was like, I don't know. It was just really tough mentally to be like, to go out there and, you go out on the walkout for the field and you look and there's like 5 people in the stands and it's like the parents of the other players on the team when you're playing. And, you were playing like in Brampton and like you're playing in these kind of satellite towns around Toronto and in Ontario. And you're just like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
What is there a purpose here? Like, am I like, no one's watching, no one's going to remember these games. Like, where is this leading to? Or am I just, wasting my time, So you're constantly trying to find meaning in what you're doing, which I think is really difficult and was the biggest challenge more so than any other pro team that I had been on before.
Sure. Hey friends, we got to pause the podcast right there and the interview. We'll have part 2 next week. It's just been a really rich time. I'm aware of your time and don't want to use it all up, but wow, Clint will come back next week and share more of his story. And for those of you that just didn't catch that last little bit, I just think it's imperative. It's so important. It's like there are moments when we come to find ourselves wondering, is there any purpose? Should I keep doing what I'm doing? Because it's really a struggle. And we'll hear more of Clint's story next week. We'll also get in a little game of Crosses with Rev. So join me next week. This is Rev Brad coming to you from the Touchline.